Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to show you 4 reasons, either 4 or 5, but 4 reasons at least, why I believe that food prices will almost double, if not completely double, this year. Last year around this same time, so January of 2022, I said that food prices would go up around 50% by the end of 2022, and I believe that's come to pass. Of course, not all food prices have gone up 50% in 2022. But what I'm talking about is like the mean. You have some prices that have gone up 100%. You have some prices that have gone up only 20% or 10%. Look at eggs, for example. The price of eggs probably gone up 400 or 500% in many regions within the United States. However, I'm going to show you the reasons why I feel that food prices this year are just going to go up and up and up, so you better stock it up right now. I'm going to go through these really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, but towards the end I'm going to show you just how close we are to the edge as far as having food left over from last year's crop in order to get us through next year's crop and harvest. Atmospheric rivers dump heavy rains, snow across California. These are things that are going to continue to happen. As I've stated in the past, we're going into a cycle, a weather cycle, where we're going to have erratic weather events happening at the same time in different parts of the world and even in different parts of certain countries. So another example is Brazil. More than 20 dead and thousands displaced as heavy rain triggers floods and landslides in Brazil. Saudi Arabia, heavy rain floods for second time in weeks. Again, in Saudi Arabia, they had snow in this place that's called Tabuk, and temperatures dropped drastically. I believe that had something to do with the weather events that we were having during that big freeze that we had last week. Flooding threatens African food supply just as much as drought. Now, all of these articles that I'm pulling up, ladies and gentlemen, you can pull them up too. Very easy to do so if you have internet coverage, that is. These are all recent, right? These are all like within the year 2022. But all of these things are affecting our food supply. And only because it's not affecting it right in the country that you live in, I'm going to show you here later on towards the end how it is actually affecting the country that you live in directly as far as how much you have to pay for food going forward. Let's take a look at Pakistan. Pakistan floods threaten Afghan food supply. This is one that I actually covered on a video where Pakistan lost about 80 to 90% of their entire crop for that year because they had a massive flood. And look at this one, ladies and gentlemen. They're even going as far as considering having floating farms. Does this make it sound like it's something that's going to go away anytime soon? Floods in the Philippines leave 51 dead. Over a dozen are still missing. So 19 are still missing. And this just happened not too long ago. And here it says, when floods threaten Nigeria's food security, everyone suffers. November 2022. And why is flooding so bad for crops, ladies and gentlemen? So here they say it very simply. Flooding degrades the environment and destroys crops, farm settlements, livestock, and seedling stores. This reduces harvest and affects the next planting season, resulting in a food shortage crisis. So all of these floods that are occurring now that may be affecting our crops today will also affect it next year. Bread and noodle supplies face a new threat from Australian floods. So this is pretty much the first reason why I say that we are going to see food prices continue to go up, because these floods that have occurred, they've only started to do their damage as far as what crops we can plant, how much of it we're going to be able to harvest. But it also carries into the next year. The next thing is going to be droughts. See, only because we're having floods doesn't mean that that's all we're having. We're having droughts too. Simultaneous droughts could threaten global food security, says a study that was conducted, or this was published on 9 February 2022. California drought is squeezing farmers and threatening food prices. This was May of this year. And it's still happening, ladies and gentlemen. Only because California had a flood doesn't mean that they're still having a drought. It's actually really bad when you get a lot of rain after having a drought for so long. Droughts in China can devastate global supply chains and energy transition efforts. China as well, ladies and gentlemen. Why do you think that they have 70% of the corn of the world? They have their stock of corn is about 70% of the world. I think it's 51, 53% of the wheat. Soybeans is also in the 50s. Copper, 80%, I think. Aluminum, 20%. This is all data that I got from a video that I did here not too long ago. But China has been stocking up. Why is that? It's because they see what is coming. Just like the people that see what is coming when they're starting to talk about having farms that are floating. And this is from Forbes. U.S. farmers struggle through doubt to bring food to the table, but face more challenges ahead. And this here is a picture. Unfortunately, I believe this is an almond farm or some kind of an orchard where they decided to kill their trees and rip them out their roots in order to allow some other trees to live, because they are in such a dire strait when it comes to droughts. California faces worst drought since 1895, threatening food and power supply. The summer drought's hefty toll on American crops. And here they go on to say, crops don't like drought. They don't like extreme heat or extreme cold. They don't like flooding or air pollution. Well, I would say that crops really do like CO2 because it is their food. All right, ladies and gentlemen. However, with them trying to block the food that our crops get by, number one, trying to reflect more sunlight out of our atmosphere, which in my opinion is a recipe for disaster. Number two, by cutting off the fertilizer supply that we need in order to grow the same amount of food that we need in order to live, throughout the world. And number three, farmers just getting the tail end of everything, never getting the support that it needs from the government, i.e. us, the taxpayers. Instead, we send that money overseas instead of helping our own farmers here, which in case would help everyone in the world. Because the more successful that our farmers are here, the more that can be exported out to other countries that just can't produce what they need. And war, ladies and gentlemen, you can all see how the war that's happening in the eastern part of Europe has affected food supply throughout the world, especially for countries that are impoverished. Right? These countries have to import their foods because, why? I'll go ahead and go there. Because their governments made stupid decisions. Now they have to import food where at one time they were food exporters. Well, what does that do? That goes ahead and takes food out of the supply system in the world because they're not making their own, putting more stress on how much food there is for the world, therefore bringing the prices up. It's just simple supply and demand. And even the CEO of Goya came out and said, hey, all of this war that's going on, it's going to have an effect on our food. And going to the next thing that I wanted to talk about that is going to affect food prices this year and probably double it is everything that I said before. But in addition to that, the war on fossil fuels. So it's a war as well. And why is the war on fuel, the war on fossil fuels, whatever you want to call it, why is that important to food production, ladies and gentlemen? Well, here they tell you why. Next year's food crisis will be different from this year. Here's how it could change for the worse in 2023. And I just highlighted the one thing that has to do with energy, that has to do with fuel. Of course, we all know that farmers need energy in order to do everything that they do. So the higher the cost of energy, then the higher the cost of the food. And the higher the cost that you're going to have to pay for it, taking it off the shelf. But here it says, farmers are using less fertilizers due to high prices, which could depress harvests. We need energy, we need fuel in order to make fertilizer. And since there is a war on fossil fuels or a war on energy, whatever you want to call it, everything is going to get much more expensive before it hits your dinner table. And for those of you that don't understand why it is that we need energy in order to grow food, well, this here explains it. Do you need energy to grow? Absolutely. How do plants get energy? Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use sunlight. That same sunlight that they are now trying to block from entering our atmosphere, ladies and gentlemen. This is asinine. Water. So plants need water, of course. Droughts, anyone? And floods that really don't do anything for the ground because the ground is so hard from the drought conditions that it doesn't really absorb the moisture. So drought, they need water, they need carbon dioxide. carbon dioxide, that they're all trying to block from us being able to create, even though it is a condition by which plants need carbon dioxide, because without carbon dioxide, they cannot grow. And energy in the form of sugar. So they need all of these things in order to grow. And all of those things, ladies and gentlemen, they do have to do with what's going on now in the world, as I just stated. So sunlight, like I said, how in the world is it that we think that's going to be a good thing, that we're blocking sunlight from getting in to our atmosphere? Incredible. But anyways, I digress. Why is there a growing need for energy? Growing energy needs. Energy is essential to the existence of mankind. All industrial processes like mining, transport, lighting, heating, and cooling in buildings need energy. With the growing population, the world is facing an energy deficit. Well, I would have to say that it's not facing an energy deficit, that the energy is there, and it's just that our politicians and our statesmen or stateswomen, they are refusing to use that energy at your peril, ladies and gentlemen. You will never see a politician that's malnutrition. You will never see a politician that cannot heat his or her home. You will never see a politician not wearing clothes that probably cost 1 month wages for the average man on the streets. And the last thing that I'm going to cover with you, ladies and gentlemen, because this is actually pretty recent. This just came in December 9th of 2022. So it's less than a month old. And as you can see here, is from the USDA, Foreign Agricultural Services. And this is going to tell us what our ending crops or our carryovers are going into 2023. This is going to be pretty interesting. All right, so here I'm just going to start off with the trade changes in 2022 and 2023. This is the amount of exports or imports that countries are changing throughout the world. And as you can see, most here are in red, all right, meaning that there's a negative. And here for Argentina, you'll see that they're going to be exporting 300,000 metric tons less of barley and 200,000 less of sorghum. And the reasons are smaller crops or weak volumes. The opposite stands true for Australia. They're going to be exporting an additional 300,000 metric tons of barley, which pretty much make up for what Argentina was not able to do. But Canada is going to export 500,000 metric tons less. Lower exports from the United States. China, 700,000 less for sorghum. European Union, 500,000 less for corn that they're going to export, and they're going to be importing 1,500 or 1.5 million metric tons more. Iran, 500,000 less. Korea, you can see this for yourself. So there's pretty much, the delta is to the negative, meaning that the difference comes out to the negative. All right. Some of these are a zero-sum game, like this 2,000 here and this 300 here. But when you add it all up, it's a negative as far as exporting or importing. So now I want to talk about wheat. And believe it or not, wheat is actually the one that looks the best out of all of them. But in my opinion, it doesn't look good enough. And it's not because I'm being pessimistic. It's just, let me explain here. So this here is the world wheat production and consumption. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at. The world wheat production and consumption, which gives us an ending stock, or what I like to call a carryover. So you can see here that in 2022 and 2023, it shows that we're supposed to be doing 782,675,000 metric tons. All right. And that's our production. That's what's estimated as far as our production. However, we're going to use of that, we are going to use as a world 791,166. It will leave us with 267,822, which is roughly 1/3. It's about 1/3 of what we use up in a year. Meaning, ladies and gentlemen, remember that story that I went over with you all, a year without a summer? That can happen. That is very likely to happen. We're actually overdue for an event like that, where a volcano spews ash into the atmosphere and pretty much gives us a year without a summer, where crops just don't grow. We have a 3-month stock for the world, pretty much. Now let's take a look at rice. world rice production, consumption, and stocks. So here we're looking at 2023, okay? We can look at 2021 also. I'm going to leave the link to this specific site on a linked comment, on a pinned comment, so that you can take a look at it if you like. So here for 2022, 2023, we're forecasting to have 503,690,000 metric tons. All right, so that's how much we're forecasting to make, which is a little bit less than last year. But let's take a look at what our consumption is going to be. So you can see here that our consumption is estimated to be 517,769, which is more than what our production is estimated to be. And if you take a look at 2022 right here, 2021, 2022, we produce 515, but we consume 520. So we're already going into 2022 and 23 into a delta with a negative, right? So let's take a look at what our ending stock is going to be. Our ending stocks, ladies and gentlemen, will be 169. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is about 30%, 31, 32% of what we use in an entire year, which means that we have roughly 4 months or so worth of rice, right? This is what we have, 4 months worth of rice for the world, not just for any one country. And here we have the world coarse grain production, consumption, and stocks. And let's take a look at 2022 and 2023. So we're estimated to be making a little bit less than last year, producing about 1459. All right, I'm just going to keep it at 1459 because you all know what it means. You take this number and multiply it times 1,000, and that's how many metric tons. Okay, so 1459 is what we're looking to make. We're looking to use 1467, so a little bit more. And our carryover is going to be 326. So our carryover is going to be roughly 25% of what we have for the world, of what we need for 1 year. So roughly 3 months worth of production. Notice that everything that we've talked about here really is only about, at the very most, if it's rationed, in my opinion, maybe 6 months worth of food. If it's rationed, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you that are asking, why are you only going over grains? Because grains is everything. That's how animals are fed. That's how most of the products that we consume are fed, is with grains. Even if you're a meat eater, that meat that you're eating more than likely consumed grain throughout its lifetime. So let's take a look at corn. All right, so corn, we're looking at 1168. Okay, that's how much we're looking to produce. We're looking to consume a little more than what we are producing, 1175, and we will have a delta or a carryover of 300. So 300 goes into 1175, roughly 4 times, just shy. So that's about 25%. So we're going to have about 25% of the corn that we normally use in a given year. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is why I believe that we are going to have an increase in food prices that's going to be a lot more than it was last year. I hope I'm 100% wrong, and if I am, I will celebrate that with you next December, okay? But I believe that food prices are going to continue to go up, not only because of the demand and supply, or the supply and demand, but because of these weather forces that we are experiencing, and I believe we will continue to experience at a more rapid pace going forward, and also because of wars. And one thing that I didn't mention is inflation. The government is going to continue to print money as long as we allow it, and we the people have not suffered enough yet to stop the government from printing money at will. So inflation will also be a cause. So straddle up, get prepped up if you're not prepped. If you're prepped, stack it to the rafters, fill in those gaps, and don't lose sight, because ladies and gentlemen, we all need to eat. Right? And we are not one of the people that sit at the ivory towers making these decisions that affect the average person. We are the average person. So do what you have to do now in order to protect your families from what's coming ahead. This is coming. It's plain and simple to see. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll finish it off with this. Remember that it's okay to hope. Hope all that you want. But hope without being prepared is only hope. Meaning that there's not going to come anyone to save you. You're on your own, ladies and gentlemen. So do what you have to do today. Prepare now, because believe it or not, times are still good. You prepare now in the good times, you're going to be prepared during the hard times, and you will make it through. Have a great day. God bless every one of you. I do have a review video coming out later on today, an awesome camping stove that I found that I believe you can actually use to cook full meals without just having to resort to heating up a little bit of water. So be on the lookout for that. We'll talk to you later. God bless you all.